first, man, so y'all know I'm a Steelers fan, or at least those that have watched the show for any period of time know I'm a diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but I have taken on, going back to last season, or really 2 off seasons ago, if we want to be more specific, I've taken on like an adoptive team. Someone I'm really going to pull for in basically every game they play, unless they were to match up against my Steelers, and that is the mighty Detroit Lions. And before we get into anything, hey, Coach Campbell, Dan Campbell, what'd y'all do on Monday Night Football, the Seattle Seahawks?
Kneecap.
Caps were bitten in Detroit, Michigan. The Lions beat the Seahawks 42-29 in an offensive, skill contest extravaganza between these two teams. Geno Smith was really good, 395 through the air, right? A touchdown. Kenneth Walker, 3 touchdowns on the ground. But the story of the night was that Detroit Lions offense, be it in the running game where they ran for $116 collectively, be it Jared Goff, who, by the way, how's 18 for 18, 292, 2 touchdowns throwing, by the way, catching a touchdown from Amon-Ra St. Brown on a beautifully run trick play. By the way, great throw by a wide receiver, St. Brown, and a great catch over the shoulder by a quarterback, Jared Goff. No gloves involved. Listen, he didn't need gloves in that situation. Good call by Ben Johnson. But finish off on Goff, though. QBR 0 to 100 of 95 and a passer rating. I don't know how he didn't have a perfect passer rating. Maybe it was the safety at the end, but a passer rating, it's hard to do much better than this, 155.8. So Jared Goff essentially played a perfect game. And it's funny. We did a segment. Obviously, I'm live on the Grid Network's YouTube channel. We did a segment last night on the Grid's game show called the 8 o'clock spot. Please tune in every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. We do a game show, and it's a competition, who has the best takes and whatnot. And one of the questions, matter of fact, at the very end of the show, was who's the best team in the NFC? Is it the Detroit Lions? Is it the Minnesota Vikings? Is it somebody else? Now, you'll see on Bryson's Best 10 kind of the more specific rankings of teams in the NFC, as well as obviously in the AFC and the NFL in totality. To me, it's razor thin just on surface level. So Minnesota has, and along with Pittsburgh, and it's a competition right now, arguably the best defense in professional football. Brian Flores, thus far, assistant coach of the year, no doubt about it. Kevin O'Connell, along with Matt LaFleur. Now, O'Connell probably took the lead after Sunday, but coach of the year thus far through the first 4 weeks. O'Connell's been unbelievable. Brian Flores has done an insane job with the defense. They were active on, adding guys in the draft, in free agency, adding Stephon Gilmore. Dallas Turner was my preseason pick to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. They got a lot of pieces in Minnesota that can really make things hard for you as an offense, to put it mildly. But I was thinking of it like this. Minnesota, Detroit, no Super Bowls between the two of them. Vikings made 4 Super Bowls in the 70s. Basically we're like the 90s Bills, other than the fact that they didn't go to 4 Super Bowls in a row, but came up short. Those are some really, really good Minnesota teams. Detroit's obviously never gone. They got to the NFC title game recently a year ago, blew a 17-point lead to the Niners. Maybe if a couple plays go their way, they potentially win that sucker. But these are 2 franchises. We've tended to give Minnesota more respect because they've had longer playoff runs. They have had long stretches of just being absolutely dreadful, the way the Lions have, even though the Lions, of course, have turned it around under Dan Campbell. But I was thinking about it like this. There's a lot of known commodities for the Detroit Lions. I pretty much know what I'm getting every Sunday. Win, lose, or draw, I mostly know what I'm getting. Defensively is my only concern with this team. They're the polar opposite of the Vikings, where, 29 to Seattle. The Seahawks basically have, 500 yards of offense, essentially. Kenneth Walker's great. Geno Smith, it looks like freaking prime Russell Wilson like 10 years ago. It's unbelievable. And that's a concern. The secondary, which I really hoped would get better thus far, kind of uneven, not terribly promising on a Monday Night Football game at home. But Jared Goff, I know who he is. You give him time in the pocket, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Now, when pressure breaks down, Jared Goff turns into like darn near a backup. But you get Jared Goff time in the pocket with the best O-line in football, he can go 18 for 18. And by the way, we could show you all stats provided by our friends at Stat News, all graphics provided by my man Alfred Parsar Jr. We can show you the stats right here with Jared Goff in the first half of his last 2 games. Look at that. 24 of 24, 229 passing yards, 2 TDs, obviously 0 interceptions. First quarterback in over 45 years to start 2 games in a single season with 10 or more consecutive completions. So last 2 first halves, Jared Goff has been literally perfect. What does that point to? Props to Goff, no question. But Ben Johnson, This is what I've talked about often with Nathaniel Hackett and the New York Jets is the lack of creativity, right? Forget great coach, and I think Ben Johnson's a great offensive coordinator, maybe the best in the league. Any coach worth their salt has a good first 15 plays, has a good opening script. You have all week to work on, especially in the case of Detroit, an extra day to prep for Seattle, a Seahawks defense, which have been unbelievable, albeit against bad quarterback play, the first 3 games. That's where coaches are judged. And you see the results of Jared Goff. He's been, again, in the last 2 first halves on mostly scripted plays, literally perfect. Not that Minnesota has it, but that's Detroit. We know who Ben Johnson is as an offensive coordinator. We know Dan Campbell, win, lose, draw, is going to have his guys ready to play. I have questions about him situationally, but he's going to have his guys ready to play. Minnesota, fantastic. I mean, maybe the best defense in the league. Kevin O'Connell's a proven great coach. Flores is a great defensive coordinator. He got the weapons on offense. TJ Hawkinson may play this week. May play his first game of the year with Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson, best receiver in the game, with Jordan Addison. All these pieces that they have. This may sound harsh, but darn it, this is how I view things. It's like if you were it's like, this is a dark example, but it's like if someone was a convicted felon for the first time in their life and someone who did it a second time. Like in the state of California, if you commit a felony, if you're convicted of a felony a second time, you can serve an additional 5 years in prison. Our criminal justice system, again, rightfully so, it's not perfect, but it is good in the fact that, folks who continuously break the law, there's harsher punishment. We give you less leeway. Whereas the Detroit Lions, yeah, they don't have a winning history either. Boy, but we have some no commodities there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, top 10 receiver, maybe bordering on top 5. I don't want to go too crazy. No question top 10. If he keeps doing what he's doing, who knows? Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, great offensive line. Goff and Ben Johnson in sync. Jamison Williams, who I said would come out to play this season. No injuries, no suspensions. And he saw what he did with the long touchdown, just like he did against the Rams in week 1 on Monday against Seattle. The reason I use that example, because there are known commodities with the Minnesota Vikings. I got to see more from Sam Darnold. And it may sound unfair. I have often said, we know Sam Darnold drafted 3rd overall out of USC 2018 to the New York Jets. And I've often said on the show is that the New York Jets is the franchise where all young quarterbacks' dreams go to die. And we know it didn't go terribly well with Sam Darnold. There's the infamous M&F game versus the New England Patriots and Belichick, where he's literally seeing ghosts. All this. There's a mess in New York. Then he goes to Carolina, and he's okay, but he mostly isn't playing terribly efficient football. All completion percentages in the high 50s. Just not a great player. Then he goes to San Francisco. He's with Shanahan. He backs up Purdy, gets to kind of absorb some of that information. And now he goes to a great coach in Kevin O'Connell with excellent weapons in Minnesota. The man might be the MVP of the league through the first 4 weeks. I get that, and I give him props for that. Everybody who is committed, in the football context, in this instance, criminal acts, aka turnovers and inefficient play at the quarterback position, everybody deserves a second chance. But I am going to give the guy in Detroit, not just Goff, but the guys in Detroit, because I have a longer history with them, slightly, but longer, of winning success. Of being one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL in the second half of the 2022 season after a horrible start, darn getting to the playoffs. After getting to the NFC title game last year, upsetting Kansas City on opening night on ring night in Arrowhead Stadium, or banner night rather. They didn't get the rings, but they got the banner. I'm going to give you more leeway if you give me reason to. If your history shows me that I should. And the reality is with Sam Darnold, and you'll see where I have the Vikings on Bryce's best 10. Spoiler alert, they're pretty high on the list. You'll see. But that's the concern. Is that we have, prior to this year, we have 6 years of evidence that says, he's back up. Now, this may, turn around his reputation. But, I use the example like with Baker Mayfield. Does Cleveland make quarterbacks work? And by the way, I used to be a Baker skeptic. But is Cleveland a franchise exactly gets quarterbacks right? You see the memes all the time with these poor Browns fans. And I say that somewhat kiddingly. Browns fans really get on my nerves. Point is, they have these jerseys where they got the duct tape of all the quarterbacks' names that have played for them in like the last 25 years or something. Baker got him to a playoff game. Matter of fact, won a playoff game on the road in Pittsburgh. and pushed the defending champion Chiefs to the brink in that second playoff game. So even despite how it ended in Cleveland, how it went in Carolina, went to the Rams, somewhat of a quarterback rehabilitation to a certain degree, and then with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you've been crushing it. We do have more extensive history with Baker playing well prior to his best football, which is coming right now in Tampa Bay. We don't really have that with Sam Darnold. Is that fair? History or the future will tell us that. Only time will tell us that. But I have more of extensive history with Goff, with this offensive line, Campbell, Ben Johnson, the weapons, running backs. And by the way, we have consistency with the defense. Aiden Hutchinson's awesome, and after that, it's a little shaky. That's the thing that has me a little bit concerned as picking the Lions to go to the NFC title game. But I don't know. I think we're in a spot right now with Detroit where they're more known commodities. They're mostly healthy. Now, knock on wood, that stays the case. But we know it's the NFL. It's a physical sport. Injuries are going to happen. A lot of times it's about who's the healthiest team at the end of the year. And so, we'll see what happens moving forward. Detroit and Minnesota, they play actually in a couple of weeks. So that's, Detroit's in a few weeks rather. Detroit's in a bye. They go to Dallas and then they go to Minnesota. That'll be a fun game. I don't know what the primetime game is on October 20th. They need to flex that puppy to like a big Fox or CBS game. Like that's a huge, huge matchup. But I just, it's as well as Minnesota's playing, and you'll see where I've got him later in the show on Bryce's Best 10. I just can't buy in him quite as much as Detroit because I have a longer, extensive history with the Lions. And as for Dan Campbell, and as for this Lions team, you heard it in my little soundbite, everybody gets a kneecap. Does any team in the NFL know who they are more than Detroit? Maybe Kansas City, because but even Kansas City, right? They used to be a high-flying team. Then they used to be a kind of a death by 1,000 cuts team. Now it's just it's just like the Patriots. It's ridiculous. Not turn the ball over. Our defense is going to make some plays. You're going to give us unforced errors. I don't think there's a team in the NFL. Pittsburgh's in that conversation for sure. That knows who they want to be week in and week out like the Detroit Lions do. That doesn't mean to say the game plans are the same every week. Otherwise, they wouldn't have this type of success. Man, they know who they are. We are going to absolutely punch you in the freaking teeth for 60 minutes. We are not going to relent. And no matter what the score is, and you've seen it now for basically 3.5 years with Dan Campbell's squad, I think that's the best team in the NFC right now, bar none. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.